I'm off, and now we're recording. The recording will be provided after the meeting. It just needs a little bit of time to process. I'll toss it up on YouTube, share the link with you. It will be unlisted, so folks can't find it, but you're welcome to share the link with as many people as you want. It's really up to you. You'll have persistent access to that pretty much indefinitely. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and share my screen. And I am in just a demo course on your site right now. I'll go ahead and I'm going to temporarily turn off my video. It's not related to the recording. It's just I want to make sure that we have a nice steady connection while I'm also sharing my screen. So just makes things a little bit simpler. In terms of using badges in a site, there are two different contexts for badges. There are site-wide badges that can be added by an administrator. There are also course level badges that can be added by an instructor or anyone with a higher role. So instructor, manager, site administrator, something like that. Badges can be really useful for anything from really small accomplishments in a course or site all the way up to full-blown certifications for completing a course. You can set them to expire after a certain amount of time. So if this is for, let's say, a recurring type of certification, it might be a better option than a certificate, or it might be a really great complement to using something like a certificate. We can also put together reports for you, if you like, that would run to tell you who's received what badge and whether or not that badge has expired. Your learners slash faculty and staff can also take those badges that they earn in your system and display them publicly on, let's say LinkedIn or a Badger profile, spelled like the animal, but without the E at the end. So it's just one of those classic Web 2.0 services that is allergic to vowels. So you can provide badges to learners that they can then show externally. So if this was for a course, it might be really useful for those learners as they're approaching graduation to be able to market themselves a little bit more effectively when they are job hunting. I know I mentioned this earlier, but they can be set at the course and the site level. The creation process is going to be exactly the same. The only difference between the two is the criteria that you would set to award a badge in a course versus at the site level. And again, site level would require administrative level access. So right now, I'll start with the course, and I'm just in a test course on your site. What I'm going to do, your theme's a little bit different than some of the themes that our clients use, but I do also have a backup site that I can show that's running Boost. So we may pop over to that tab from time to time, just in case. If you can't see anything very well, let me know. I can always increase the zoom a bit. But in a course, to create a badge, you're going to come over to the administrative drawer or administration drawer over on the left. And what you're looking for is badges. It's pretty much right in the middle there. And from here, you can either click manage badges or add a new badge. If you're adding a new one, you can just jump ahead. Otherwise, if you go to manage badges, it will show all the badges you have in the course. Right now, I don't have any in this test course. And there's also an add a new badge button here. So really, all paths lead to the same destination. I'm going to go ahead and click on add a new badge. And on the first screen, it's just going to prompt me for three things that I have to include. And that is the name of my badge, a brief description that would appear to the user who receives it, and then an image for that actual badge. Now, I think there might have been a separate ticket about this. I could be mistaken, or it could just be that I had another client ask about this recently. But there are some badge generators out there. If you Google it, sometimes they have a cost associated with them. So they'll let you create a badge for free, but if you wanted to export it, you would have to pay for it. Another option that you could look at, if someone on your team has Adobe Illustrator experience, they could look at creating those, or you could even purchase something like this. This is just a site called creativemarket.com. I jokingly refer to it as Etsy for digital materials. But there are badge kits out there. I just found this by searching for badge creator kit on their website. And essentially what something like this is, it's an Illustrator file, and each badge type is on a different layer. So you select which layer is visible. You can update it from there. So you have all sorts of different badge backgrounds and banners and elements that you can add in, and just different flares that you can add in. So this is generally how it would work. You pick a background, you pick elements, maybe you pick a starburst, and then you add your text, you export it, you have your badge. If you are familiar with Illustrator, that made a ton of sense. If you've never used Illustrator before, I'm so sorry. I recognize that was a little bit beyond the scope, but there are some services out there that would show you how to actually create those badges. Now, where was I? Okay, creating the new badge. Let's just go ahead and call this my first badge. And then for the description, this is the first badge I've created. Award to people, and typing skills always diminish whenever you're sharing a screen. Again, this description would show up for the learner, for the user, when they view that badge in their Moodle profile. So when they see that layer, they will see this description. So this is a really good spot to explain to them why they're receiving that badge, what criteria they met, just so it's a little bit more explicit. And then for image, you can include all sorts of images. Let's see, I've got one over here from our 311 training course that I was just working on the other day. So I'm just going to drag and drop one in here. These can be a wide range of size. I would encourage you to try and keep it at equal dimensions, like a square type of dimension. So 100 by 100, 200 by 200. I usually try and aim for something around 600 by 600 for a size, since it's going to scale it down, but that would make sure that the image is nice and high quality. You can also include additional information in here, like an image caption or information about who made that image, if you needed to attribute it in some way, shape, or form. And then the last option, which is optional, but you may want to use this, is if this badge is meant to expire at some point. So let's say this is for a certification. You could set up how that expiration date is calculated. So again, I've made the zoom very large. This is making the lines break in really weird ways. But one of the options is to have a fixed date. So this would expire September 2nd next year. Or it could be a relative date. So if this is a certification and the employee is certified the moment that they get this badge, but they need to recertify in exactly a year, we'll just put in 365 days, because next year is 2022. Gosh, I feel like I've lost all track of time over the past year and a half. So it's not a leap year, so it is 365 days. But once this badge is issued, if I'm choosing relative date, then exactly 1 year from that date, it would expire. It will still show up for the user that receives it. It will just be grayed out and it will be labeled as expired. And if they've shared that badge somewhere else, like let's say they've exported it to a site like Badger, then it would also be listed as expired there as well. So you would need to pick those options if this is going to expire at some point. If it never will, we'll just leave this set as never. And I'll click Create Badge. Now, this badge has, it will say, criteria for this badge has not been set up yet. So that's the first tab that's going to take me to. This is where I get to pick, how does someone actually get this badge? What do they have to do to earn this? And this is where the primary difference between site level badges and course level badges will be very obvious. Everything else is virtually the same. Where it differs is the criteria for those badges. And in other words, what you have to do to earn it. So the criteria in the course level, there are 5 of these. So one is manual issue by role. So you pick which role for a user would be able to actually assign that badge. If you're going in as an administrator, for example, you can say anyone with a teacher level role can go in and manually assign this badge to a learner. So maybe this is just an outstanding contribution to the class type of badge that you want to manually assign to learners that really go above and beyond in a certain class period. It could be based around the course completion. If you do that, you do have to set up course completion criteria for that course. It could be based around, I'm going to skip ahead, activity completion. And if I select that, it will show me every activity in the course that I've set up activity completion criteria for, and I can select one or any or even all of those options to say my learners have to complete these specific activities before they can be awarded this badge. Competencies, my guess is most of our clients are not using competencies. It tends to be more popular in the K-12 world, but if you were using competencies and they met those competencies, you could award the badge that way. That would be a larger conversation that would go beyond the scope of this particular meeting. You can also award a badge, ironically, if they've been awarded other badges. And to give you an idea of where this might come in, let's say you have a course built around different modules. And each module is something that the learner is meant to go through. And once they complete that training module, then they receive a badge just for that section. So you could create a more comprehensive badge that would indicate they have completed every module in the course, as evidenced by the fact that they received all these other badges. I tend to lean more toward using activity completion for something like that, just so that people don't get badged out. That way there's kind of like one comprehensive badge for the course, and it ends up being a bit more meaningful. But you do have the option to, again, select multiple badges. So let's see, it looks like Jessica's raised the hand. So Jessica, what was the question that you wanted to share?
Just about the building on badges. So if we had a course, would it be better if they gave certificates then, and then at the end you got your main badge? Or would it be better to do little badges and then get your big badge at the end?
In that case, it could really depend. I almost lean toward activity completion for the individual elements within the course. And then at the end, possibly a certificate and a badge. The badge is more so for the learner. The certificate tends to be more so for someone the learner is accountable to.
So the thing is how this course works is like they're my credentials. So like if they finish this one quiz and they pass it, then they get either a certificate or a badge to go back to their manager or somebody, telling them that they completed just that one part. But then if they complete all four of them, then they get like their big certificate or badge.
Gotcha. In that case, if they are going back to a supervisor for the individual accomplishments, it might be worthwhile to go with certificates so that they have, let's say, a PDF document that they can download and quickly email over. Whereas with the badge, it's a little bit harder to share those unless they're also connecting out to an external service like Badger, as an example, and then sharing their backpack with whoever their supervisor happens to be. So if the idea is the micro-credentialing, then you may want to lean more towards certificates. Again, just because you have an easily downloadable deliverable that they could share with whoever their supervisor happens to be.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. I will say, given the training criteria, it may also be worthwhile to do that sort of Uber badge that you were describing, like that one comprehensive badge at the end of the course. That way they have something to also share externally. Let's say the internal training is about different technologies that you offer on campus. Being able to say, oh, I took this training on how to use Excel, the bane of so many folks' existence, then that might be something that would be really worthwhile to share externally. For this badge, I do need to select some criteria, and I can actually use multiple criteria here. So I'm not just limited to one of these options. I can mix and match as I go along. So I might select manual issue by role. The page will refresh, and I have access to quite a few roles just because I'm in as an administrator right now, but I could select instructor and client admin. And then let's see, this criterion is complete when, I actually hadn't seen this in a while. This is just saying the criterion is complete by default when any of the selected roles above award the badge. I could also say that all the selected roles have to award the badge. So in this case, it might be that I have teaching assistants in the course who have a non-editing teacher role. So I could enable that role and they could award the badge, but then I as the instructor might say, okay, all of the roles have to agree. So I as the instructor would also have to go into the course and agree to issue that badge, just so it's kind of a two-step process there. But I'll leave that at any. I'm going to go ahead and save. So I now have one piece of criteria for the badge. I'm going to go ahead and add one more, which is activity completion, because I have a few random assessments in this course, and I'm just going to go ahead and select these. So I'll pick, let's say, I think the quiz. I think that one's only set up to be view, so we don't have to actually take that one. And we can also put in an expected completion date within here. I usually don't use that feature because usually what's more important is that they complete the activity itself. So in that case, I'm going to go to, again, this criterion is complete when any of the activities are complete or all of the activities are complete. If you're doing activity completion, you probably want all. If it's a course where, let's say there are 4 modules and all you need is for the learners to complete one of the 4 and they choose, then you might pick any instead. In this case, I'll go ahead and select all, and I'm only going to select the quiz. So let me go ahead and save that. And that's my criteria. So I can see I have multiple bits of criteria. I have my activity completion here. So to earn this badge, they have to complete quiz, test quiz, and it has to be issued by the instructor or client admin. So those 2 things have to be true for the badge to be issued. I'll actually go ahead and remove the manual issue by role. I don't know that we necessarily need that one because we already have the activity completion in here. And you know, one thing that I did that would have been useful to point out before I did that, if you do have multiple bits of criteria, you can select, again, any or all here. So you can require that all of those things be true or any of those things be true. So in this case, I could set it so that they have to complete that activity, or I, as the instructor, might know that they've done equivalent work outside of the course, and I can go in and manually say, no, let's give them this badge, they've earned it. So in this case, I'll set it to any. There are other tabs here that are worth a look. You can actually ignore the last 3, so endorsement, related badges, and alignments, and more so focus on message and recipients. Recipients is just a list of who's received the badge. It'll be a simple sort of table style report. It'll show you who received the badge and when. But message is the other one, and this is the message that the users receive when they earn that badge. And you can actually update this ahead of time. You can also modify this after the fact, which I really appreciate. So if you need to update it, you can. 2 things that I wanted to call out in here. There are badge, I don't know why I'm blanking on this, but basically there are form fills, essentially. Like, so this percent badge name percent will actually take the name of your badge and insert it there. So it's sort of one of those, it's like one of those mail merge style letters where it automatically pulls in the name and it'll pull in the link to the badge so that they can actually view it on the course site. But you can update this copy as long as you include this specific thing anywhere else. You can still reuse it in different text. So you don't have to have it say, you've been awarded the badge. I could say, you know, you just earned, I take out the quotation marks there, badge name, exclamation point, and it will still work just that way. So you do have control over this message. And if you like, you can attach the badge to the message. It's really up to you. That's a personal preference, but I wanted you to know that you can change the message body and subject for the message that the learners receive when they're actually notified that they've received a badge. If you wanted to, you could also have it set to notify you as well. If you select anything besides every time, so if you select daily, weekly, or monthly, you're actually going to get a digest of notifications. So it'll be a list instead of an individual one for every single learner. If this is for a course with hundreds of people or even dozens of people, you probably want to go with daily, weekly, or monthly for this type of export. And if it's getting a little overwhelming, set it to never and then open a ticket with us and we'll set up a custom report for you. We'll create as many of those as you need. So that's really no problem there. Go ahead and save changes. The last step to creating the badge is really just enabling access to it. It's disabled by default because if you set criteria, and let's say some of my learners already qualify for that criteria, then if I enable access, I can no longer edit the badge. Once a learner receives a badge, I can no longer edit that badge in a meaningful way. I can't change the criteria, as an example. I would have to actually go into my list of badges, duplicate it, and then update the duplicate. So once I click Enable Access, that is when this becomes live for all of my learners. In fact, they give you a really large warning message. I forgot about how large this warning message is, that you're about to basically be locking the criteria. And so now that's available to learners. If I had learners in this course, if they had already met the criteria, they would be notified pretty much immediately. I think there's a scheduled task associated with it, but my recollection is it runs on demand. So they would get a notification almost immediately that you have earned a badge if they've already met the criteria for this particular one. Let me go back into the test course. So really the criteria in this case is viewing this quiz. That was all that was needed to check this one. Or is this one manually marked? It is. Okay, so now that's complete. I technically would have earned this badge If I go back into Manage Badges, I can see that there's one recipient now, and that is me. So I just earned that badge. I can go ahead and view that issued badge if I need to. So this is essentially what it would look like to the learners when they view the details for the badge. It will show them who it came from. It will show them, what the description was. This was the description we were talking about earlier, and the criteria that you had to have met. This one does expire. It looks like. Oh, no, I didn't have the expiry. Sorry. So this was the day it was issued. This was my evidence. So I'm all set. And I can also download a copy of it from here if I like. I can also go into my preferences and set up a connection to Badger or another backpack service, and then export that so that I could embed it, let's say, on a site like LinkedIn, as an example. So that's the general idea. To take this one step further, you can also manage badges at the site level. Again, I've made my zoom in my browser so large that it's breaking things across lines, including this warning message. So that's why it looks odd. It's just I'm zoomed to almost 200%. But in site administration, I do see a few more things than you might, but you should see badges here in the initial list, and then you can go to manage badges or add a new badge from that particular point. The process is going to be exactly the same. In fact, let me go ahead and take a look at the settings for one that you already have in here. And this one's disabled. It looks like it might be a copy. The only difference between creating a badge at the site level and creating a badge at the course level is the available criteria that you have to assign to that badge. And so there are a couple of extra options here. You still have manual issue by role, so you can pick which roles can assign that site level badge. You can still base it on other awarded badges. So let's say you have a program with 4 courses that the learners have to complete, and they get a badge for completing each course. You could say, okay, this is the overall site-wide badge that they earn for earning all those other badges. You could base it off of cohort membership. You could base it off of profile completion. So let's say there's a field that you want everyone to update. You can award a badge for updating that particular profile field, just a little extra motivation there. But the other thing that you can do, let me come in and add a new badge in here. Testing at the site level. By the way, from autocomplete, you can tell that I'm still working on that calendar issue where everything shifts by a day. Site level badge. And for the image, I'm going to go ahead and use the same one that I used before. We'll create that badge. Look at the criteria. I think the one that I was looking at before might have been created previously. But the extra piece here is at the site level, you can set the criteria of completing a set of courses. For this to work, you do have to enable course completion for each of those courses, and you have to have that criteria set. So in other words, the learners have to actually be able to complete that particular course or those particular courses. But this is another area where if you've set things up as a program and there's a series of courses that have to be added or completed, you could set this up so that that badge is only awarded after that happens. And this is another area where you want to be really descriptive with that description of the badge so that they know exactly why they earned it. That description will also display to others if they choose to display it publicly. So, if a potential employer is looking at one of your seniors for a potential opening, then being able to see what exactly they earned that badge for could be really helpful. And let's see. I think the drop-down menu might take a good bit, but I could pick different courses within the site. I can also search for those. I'm not going to pick any of these because I don't want, it wouldn't break anything, but I certainly don't want to create, fluff on your site if I can help it. But you would basically just search for courses, you would add those in, and then you would click the Add Courses button, and then the learners would have to complete those courses before they could actually receive this badge. Again, that's the primary difference between a site level badge and a course level badge. The other way that I put it is a course level badge is for anything that's accomplished within the course. Site level badge is for anything accomplished across the site. That tends to be the primary difference there. So with all that in mind, we have a couple of minutes left. I wanted to check in and see if anyone had any questions that I could be helpful with.
Michael, I just had one question as well. So when you create a badge, can you delete them after? if you create one and it's not been awarded, are you allowed to delete them? Like if you look at it and you just don't like it, or do you just update the image? I just wasn't sure how that works. If it's been awarded, you can't delete?
If it's been awarded, you won't. I don't know that you'll be able to update the image. Let's go ahead and test that live just so that I'm not giving you bad information. Go ahead and manage the badge that's already got a recipient here. I know that I can't change the criteria after the fact. And no, it looks like I can't change the image either. Once
So as
it's
long as it
locked.
wasn't awarded, you could update it.
Right. Yeah. I could technically disable access to this badge, but it might be simpler if folks have already received it. It might be easier to duplicate this badge, update the criteria, and redeploy it from there. If you did want to update the image, it might be one of those things where the badge has an expiration date, so you could just set up the new one.
Right. So if we were doing some testing with badges, would we be better to do it on our dev site so that we could test receiving them and what they look like and stuff, so that we don't have a bunch of badges built in the background on the live site? Or are we if we build some in our test courses and stuff, we're the only ones that see them? Like I just don't want to have a whole bunch of stuff on the system. So I wanted to know the process, the best process to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're building them in your own test courses on your production site, then you're the only ones who will see them. Yeah,
Okay.
the site level ones, I would encourage you to just be mindful of the criteria that you set. So it might be that the criteria is, actually, you might want to double it up. So let me show you a quick example of what I mean. This was the test badge. So let's say I'm setting the criteria, and what I want to do is set it up so that it's based around profile completion, and then I select the profile field that I want the learners to enter. Let's see, what have I got under other fields? Let me go ahead and check continuing education. And I'll go ahead and save that. So they have to enter in that field, but I'll also add in manual issue by role, and then select, let's say instructor and client admin. And now that I have multiple criteria for this badge, I would leave this as all. So all of the selected criteria have to be complete for that badge to be issued. That way it gives you a bit more control over who actually gets it while you're doing your testing. And then you would just probably duplicate it, remove the criteria, and then reissue the new badge, which I know sounds like a lot of extra stuff, but I can go back and delete a badge that I haven't used at any point. Like this was the one that we used for testing just now. I'll go ahead and click that X to remove it. This is at the site level, but it's the same for course level badges too. And you're going to see the same warning messages where it's, do you want to delete and keep the badges for people who got them? Or do you want to delete it and remove any badges that have been issued in case you've issued them by mistake?
Right. Okay.
In this case, I don't think we've issued any badges, but I'll go ahead and remove the existing ones just in case. And now I get to start fresh. So it's pretty easy to clean up after the fact.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. Yeah, I just wanted to know that piece.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any other questions I can be helpful with?
I have one other question that's not totally related. If I could just ask you while you're on the call, as you add the image in, and then I think you said something about image attribution or whatever, but when we're even in our course as a whole, or our site as a whole, so when you go in and even in your course description and you add an image, and then that attribution piece comes up and says that there's a drop down where you can choose share and share alike or different licenses within that image. Does that ever show anywhere in the course, or is there a report anywhere in the course or the site showing what images actually have copyright attribution like assigned to them? We had that question come up when we were adding an image, and what does that mean? Like we choose one of the attribution licenses, but then nobody ever sees that. So is there anywhere for that to be shown?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I'm not sure. I would have to check in with probably our tier 2 team just to be safe.
Ticket in on it. I just was, when we saw the image, I just wondered on that.
Yeah, if you open a ticket, we can take a closer look. My guess is that, I mean, that information is somewhere. It's in the tables, so we can always create a report to try and pull that information out. If it exists somewhere, we can usually find it. I think the bigger question is where it might be displayed. My guess is it's probably at least displayed in the alt text, but I could be mistaken there.
Okay, no, I was just curious on that. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead and stop the recording here. And again, this will take probably about an hour.